feedback for it? I mean, I'm going to give you some, but I want you guys to give her some impressions of what you feel about the painting first. Yeah. That's like a lake.
Or, I mean, okay, so basically, I like the brush compared to the trees.
Yeah.
It's kind of like dark and tight, cool.
How would you guys, or I guess, well, I should say this. How do you guys feel about the way the value was used in comparison to the way the temperature and intensity were used?
But then on the right, that's where the light sort of comes from, so it wasn't fading out.
I think what I might suggest is right here, you got the feeling of that shadow, so it feels like it's leaning back against the wall.
Yes.
But when I look at the other area, there's a little bit of a feeling of shadow there. It looks like you're trying to suggest the feeling of light, but I think you're keeping your shadows really, really too far on the like when you get into here, you got light, dark. Here you got the light, you got the shadow. There you got the light, you got the shadow. But from a distance, they're so close that they almost get a little bit lost. So my advice would be this. When you look at something that's yellow, or red, or blue, don't think of it as, don't get too caught up in what's called the local color. And what that means is the local color is like, if it's a blue dress, then people just put down blue. If something is blue and there's light hitting it, there's going to be variations of blues. Some of the blues will be a little more towards the violet direction. Some of the blues might be a little more towards the green direction. Some might be a little more intense. Some might be a little more muted. And I think right now, if I go from this blue strip to this one all the way across, it's essentially the same blue. So the reason I'm relating that to value is that if you start seeing the contrast of light and dark, and you really develop those contrasts of light and dark, it'll start to make it a little easier to see how one blue, for example, to the next blue might also be a little different in terms of how one might tinge towards violet, and might tinge towards the direction of green. So I guess what I'm saying is to look for your contrasts. And don't try not to think of things as being too even, because that can sometimes flatten out. It looks like you're wanting to suggest some depth right there. You know, that feels kind of like against the wall, and that's wanting to suggest some idea of depth. And you know, the cache shadow there is wanting to suggest some depth. And the way to continue that is to constantly push the differences, the contrasts of things. So think of blue in the way I was saying. In yellow, you have yellow, and to the right and left of it, you have orange, and then you have green. I mean, some yellows might tinge towards the greener direction, some yellows might tinge towards the orange direction. And if you're using an artificial light, most likely, again, if you have to observe this to really find out, but most likely the yellows are going to go in the direction of the yellowish, orangish direction. But the yellows here, in comparison to there, the yellow and the shadow might start to go a little bit towards the greenish and bluish kind of direction. So essentially look for more contrast. What you were doing here, this contrast, and this contrast, think in that same kind of way on the other areas of the image. Okay?
The light came from the window.
Outside?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's even a harder setup, because you have daylight.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, plus it changes real quickly. So if you're going to paint yourself in a daylight situation, and you're going to be indoors and the light's going to come from outside, I would probably make your painting session no more than maybe 2 hours. And write down the time of the day you start and the time of the day you end, and every time you go back to that painting, start at the same time of day and end at the same time of day, so you can have consistency in your writing situation. Let's say you start at, I don't know, 9 o'clock in the morning. By the time noon comes around, the light is completely different, because the sun's moving. I mean, if you keep painting all the way into 2, 3, 4 o'clock, you have a wide variety of shifts that have happened. So if you're going to use daylight, there's nothing wrong with it. Just write down a consistent time of starting time and ending time. And I would say make your painting sessions about 2 hours each. Because just after about 2 hours, maybe 3, the conditions have changed so much to where they're not going to be the same as when you started the painting. There's a guy, Antonio Lopez Garcia. I think you know him. He's done these really large paintings of landscapes and even of people. Some of the paintings have taken the better part of 20 years almost to do. The reason it took 20 years is that he did this one big painting of Madrid, Spain. He's from Spain. And he would go and he would have this little, like a nail. He'd put a nail next to this foot, a nail next to that foot, so he knew exactly where he was standing every time. He'd write down the time he started. He'd paint for an hour or two, he'd stop. He wouldn't come back to that spot again unless the weather was the exact same, time of the day was the exact same.
Even the time of the year.
Yeah, even the time of the year, so he could maintain consistency. Now, I was saying some artists are really nuts, and he's probably got some issues somewhere. He's not psychotic, he's just a little different. But that's why his paintings took 20 years, but if you look at the end result of his paintings, it's just unbelievable. But he wouldn't have been able to achieve that unless he was really observant to all the changes from one time of the day to the next time of the day. I'm not saying take 20 years to do your painting. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting make sure there's consistency from painting session to painting session. Okay? And looking for the contrasts that are coming in each section. Right? Okay, so we have 2 more.